Hello, Joey.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. I'm Michael Potter. I'm sitting here interviewing the latest playwright in this series, Joey Ouellette. He is the writer of Pirate Attack on the 1C Bus Going Downtown, which won the 2021 Windsor-Essex Playwriting Contest, and which is finally being produced as of November 18th, 2022, for a 3-week run. Hooray, finally.
Yes.
This is also the first interview in which I've been in the same room as the person I'm interviewing in this entire series. Okay, what can you tell us about the play itself? Like, tell us about the story so they know what we're talking about here.
Well, I think there's a lot of different levels to it, but first glance, it is a group of people who go to a community center, which is for handicapped and disabled people, and it's being shut down because of budget cuts. And they decide to stop that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they take action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, there's sort of two parts to it. One, to the struggle they're facing, right? One of them is the closing of their drop-in center, which is called the Roll-In Center. And the other problem is the city's closure of the bus route, which caused the Roll-In Center to be less used than it used to be, which is what's endangering it now. So it's kind of these two problems that have intertwined and they're trying to address, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I think as we look at their lives, because really it's about each individual character, we see that it's constant problems like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is just the latest ones. It's like, yeah, the bus route, now the center's closing, tomorrow it will be a different one.
Yeah, and that's sort of, there's a lot of that running through the play, sort of a commentary on what disabled people face, sort of in their day-to-day lives. Definitely one of the things that appealed to all 5 judges in the 2021 Windsor-Essex Playwriting Contest was the fact that you created these characters who are disabled, neurodivergent, chronically ill, has some sort of special situation, and they're all people with their own sort of personalities and lives and hopes and dreams, and they want things. They're imperfect, sometimes they're wrong. All of those things that we take for granted with characters when they're well written, but it's so rare to see disabled characters treated that way. They're usually often either objects of pity or objects of ridicule or objects of inspiration. They live to inspire other people. And we were all so taken by that fact that right away when we first read it, everyone was really enthusiastic about it. Can you tell us about what led you to take that approach with the characters?
I don't know, old age. I'm not young anymore, and certainly the more people I get to meet in the world, I mean, who is able? I mean, the idea of disabled, we all have all kinds of challenges. Mm-hmm. Both my parents are quite old and in an extended care home, and the challenges they face every day just to understand who they are and what they're doing there are significant. But that doesn't diminish who they are and the impact they've had in their lives, in my life, and it's just a constant adjustment. Mm-hmm. to I don't know, we're always treading water, I guess. I mean, the rest of us, as you said earlier, they're always facing a new struggle. I think everyone, that's pretty constant for all people, but abled people just run around it, or they just do something different. But when it's taken a person who doesn't move as well so long to get into position, and then they meet the brick wall, mm-hmm. It's a whole big deal to run around it, just like the able people did.
Yeah. So coping with the necessary adaptations or changes may be a much greater struggle, mm-hmm. right? One of the things you mentioned is with your parents who are disabled now, and how they're still the people who had these lives and that had impact on you and themselves and other people and so forth. Reminded me that one of the things I think that we were so taken with as the characters is that we could see their lives outside of this situation. We could get a sense of their lives outside the situation. And they had lives outside of the situation. Yeah. We learn about where they work, and we learn a bit about their home lives and things like that, things they'd struggled with in the past and so forth. And that's, I think, something that we're just not used to seeing with disabled characters, this idea that they are just human beings right, who experience life, the way that people experience life. And we experience it differently, but there's all this diversity when it comes to what constitutes a human being leading a human life. But we only usually see a narrow band of that diversity, at least represented as persons. You know what I mean?
Yes, and one of the things that blew my mind, my sister was kind of the first little bird to fly out of our nest, and she went to Toronto to go to university. I was very close to her, so I used to go up, and I was totally blown away at the number of people who were just passing, and the realization that they all had breakfast that day, they all went to the bathroom, they all had clothes, they all had a bed to sleep in, and just the sheer number of places and activities they all had to do blew my mind. And everything we see are snapshots. I think especially in this play too, as you said, they have lives. So this is just a snapshot of a couple days of what happens to them. It doesn't define them. It's not their entirety. It's just a piece of a couple days. The future goes on. They had a past. It's part of a long line.
Yeah, as it is for everyone. We're just not used to seeing it with disabled characters.
No.
One of the interesting things for me, looking at the diversity of characters, is the kinds of disabilities and chronic conditions that are represented. Right, we have a person who is wheelchair bound. We have a person who has Tourette syndrome, a person who is autistic, a person who is nonverbal. Why those characteristics in particular? Those kinds of conditions or situations in particular?
Well, I'm an obsessive studier of things, and I've encountered all of those things and studied them, trying to understand them, trying to empathize with them. The Tourette's person is based on Jess Toms, and you can find her on the internet. She's an amazing woman.
Great, yeah.
Who is struggling a great deal. My partner was a teacher, and she had a student who only spoke in pirate language, who was autistic, and that was in the school play. Before that, he had never spoken. He was in grade 7. The other kids in his class who had been with him for 8 years had never heard him speak. But when he came to school play, he walked out there and he could talk like a pirate. I met lots of folks in wheelchairs. I remember in creative writing class, I had a very determined young woman who used to get handy transit and get to the class an hour and a half before it started. She had extremely limited mobility, just with her hands and everything. And then after the class finished, it would be another hour and a half before she could get back home again. And I admired it.
Yeah.
And nonverbal people, I mean, I was a nonverbal person myself for a long time. And again, my wife, as a teacher, she had a lot of students who were nonverbal. Apparently, it's a thing that's rising. And sometimes in a family, there would be siblings who were nonverbal.
You know, the boy in the play, or not a boy, he's a young man, Ollie, who speaks in Piratese or pirate language. And the story that you just relayed about sort of the inspiration of that character has me thinking that, you know, in a lot of cases, someone is disabled because they or we as a whole haven't yet found the tool or the context that will give them the ability to engage fully, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a problem with the person, it's a problem of the interaction between that person and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You know, we don't think about people who wear eyeglasses as disabled anymore, because eyeglasses are such a common adaptation, right? We're just used to that. We take it for granted. But you take away the glasses from most people who wear them, and they are disabled in some ways, right? But we just don't think of it that way. So you wonder, it makes me wonder, and this is the hopeful, optimistic side of me, you know, 100 years from now, what things that we consider disabilities now will we not think of as disabilities later?
Well, hopefully nothing, because just as you say, it's the constructs that we have, our sloppy, lazy world, that makes puts people at a disadvantage. I mean, even my daughter is left-handed, and going through her as a bright child, saying, I can't get the scissors to work. How come the door opens the wrong way? And all these things, and then doing research on it, seeing that left-handed people have are predicted to have a lifespan 7 years shorter because the right-handed world is deadly to them, basically. And that's just a tiny little thing, right-handed, left-handed, never mind if you're in a wheelchair or you can't see, or you you have uncontrolled body movements, or...
Yeah. You know, my dad was left-handed, and when he was in school, you weren't allowed to be left-handed, right? So they forced him to write with his right hand, and I think sometimes they would tie his left hand to his side or something, so he couldn't use it. So he had to learn how to write and do math and all of that with his right hand, but he's left-handed for everything else.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a struggle for him. It made him feel like there was something wrong with him. But why do we consider some of these variations as impediments or negative characteristics, or something that's wrong with people, when in fact the only real problem is that we're just not even trying to adapt to them?
Yeah, we can't even fathom. And I read about a woman who, I mean, we have our heart on our left side, and you know, our lungs are bigger on the right side. It's a woman whose entire body was mirror image, so her heart was on her right side. It's a rare condition, but she almost died in the hospital because the doctors couldn't deal with it.
Yeah,
it's because they expected it to be here, it wasn't.
Right,
which is ridiculous.
Right. And we've talked before, I know in the past, about, you know, how a lot of what we consider disorders or diseases or disabilities and so forth, not everything, but a lot of these things are just sort of a refusal to accept the range of human diversity.
Yeah.
How common do you think that is, in your opinion?
Oh, it's endemic. Look what's happening in Iran right now. There's a prescribed series of things you're supposed to do, and if you don't, you know, you get killed, you get beaten. There's some great books, Oliver Sacks, the man who mistook his wife for a hat. A lot of interesting things where he talks about the positive side of disorders, the negative side. We never talk about the positive side.
Yeah.
And everyone has something, really, honestly. No one is normal, as they say it.
Right, right. And what do we mean by normal, right? Yeah. One of the things I really like about this play, actually, and I don't know if it was an intentional thing on your part, but there's in a way, there's two different camps, you know, sort of in the disabled community, which, you know, I'm part of, and I used to participate more with that community online, not so much now. But one of the camps is that we need to get the general public to accept more things, more of human diversity as normal. And the other camp, which is the one I'm in, which is probably the less popular camp, is that we need to reject normality.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. And one of the things I like about the play is that the characters reject the idea that they should be normal or they could be normal with help, because that's not their goal. That's the goal that normal, quote unquote, society has for them.
Yes.
And imposes on them. Was that a conscious choice?
Oh, for sure. Throughout history, all the people I thought were important, who were the movers and shakers, who determined incredible things and that made things happen, they were outside the norm. They were the oddballs. But the things they did, the changes they made, the ideas they had were revolutionary. They never fit in, but they changed the course of humanity for the better.
Yeah.
So how is it that these people who were abnormal changed and built the world we're in, which insists that you be normal? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, and why are some abnormalities considered okay or acceptable by society and others aren't? Right? It seems to be quite arbitrary a lot of the time to me. Anyway,
I tried to let my kids. I mean, they had a lot of challenges in the world because I was their father, and they had lots of questions about why are things the way they are? Why do I get treated that way? Why do I have to do this? So they evolved a philosophy or a way of looking at the world where they classified people into categories. One was sheep, and these were people who were normal, who aspired to do normal things, who pretended to be normal, and that was the only thing they did. Then there was people they considered to be actual people who had real opinions and real ideas. A third category were people who were eggs, who could become a sheep or a person, wasn't really known yet.
Oh, right, yeah. So every sort of little child starts out as an egg, maybe.
Yeah. And that helped them to negotiate their way, because a lot of it's like, why don't I have more friends? Why do people react this way to me? And I didn't have answers for those whys, except that to be a unique person with your own ideas, you're always going to encounter problems for some reason.
Yeah. God save us from normality.
Yes.
You know, I I remember one time when my son was little, he came home from school and he was upset because some kids had called him weird, right? And so he asked, like, you know, am I weird? You know, am I not normal? And I was like, well, are you boring? And he said, no, you know, he's like 7. And I said, well, then you're weird. Because normality is boring to me anyway.
Oh, yes.
But that's considered an extreme position in the disability community. You know, there is this striving, and I understand it from sort of an unreflective human instinct point of view, to be sort of normal and accepted by whatever the mainstream happens to be in your context at this present point in history, right? And I get that as an impulse, but I think reflectively, when you think about what you want to be and what your potential is and the potential of everyone else, I think it's not long before you find yourself thinking, why do I care so much about normality? And I really love that the characters in this play don't. They make no efforts to be normal, because why would they?
It's not them. They would have to, I mean, at one point Claire says, I tried to stop my tics. I taped my mouth, I tied myself up, I couldn't. She was saying she couldn't deny herself who she was, and even if she would have tried it, she would have hated it. I mean, that's the struggle between her and her mother too. Her mother wants her to be normal. She needs to be herself. She's tried. She can't be. How can you be other than yourself? Yeah. And the relationship between Claire and her mother is one of the most interesting relationships in the play, because her mother kind of represents that position, which is also really common in the abled community, that the goal for disabled people should be normality in some way. And so it's upsetting to her that her daughter isn't normal, or isn't even sort of trying to be normal. And Claire represents the other point of view, which is, this is who I am, and I'm okay with that if it's not considered normal. But the world needs to accept me as me, right? But there's, and I think it would be really easy to turn that relationship into a caricature, and just have sort of good Claire and evil mother, right? But you don't. It's more complex than that, because the mother, you know, you realize over time, although you immediately start off not liking her, that she does care, but she's stuck in a certain perspective, and it's really hard for her to get out of it and see Claire from a different point of view. Is that something you've experienced? Oh yeah, for sure. I think especially in this play, almost every character is stuck somewhere in their point of view, and they're all, the play really is about them all changing in some way. And that's the story of my life, and probably everyone else's life. People like to settle and define things, and we're all lazy, and then we want to give up. We don't expect the egg to hatch, we don't expect the bird to fly. We just want to define things so that we can continue doing whatever it is we do. But everything's always moving and changing. It's
true, yeah. And you know, that's a good point that you raised too, about all the characters needing to change their point of view, because, not to spoil anything, but the resolution comes about because a key character decides to compromise. And that's an interesting part of the play for me too, because before that there's sort of a certain earned aggression coming from the group that uses the Roland Center, until that point where one character, I think, realizes the only way forward is to compromise in some way. And not in a way that compromises who she is, and that violates her own dignity in any way, but in a way that recognizes that we all have to move forward somehow, you know?
And it strengthens her, I think. At the end, we see her strength finally coming through, because all of what was happening before, all of what she thought was strength, was weakness. Right,
yeah. And it does take strength to compromise, because it means giving up part of what you want. Right? And I think it's probably usually the only way forward. Was that sort of the resolution that you naturally came to, or that you always had in mind, or is it something that came about in later stages of the writing process?
I think it was a requirement for the show that each person have a good character arc, and hers was the hardest because maybe she had to go the furthest. I don't know. You could look at each person and argue that point, but I think I especially needed to see the change in her, or I could not have any respect for her.
Yeah, yeah. One of the and respect for each of these people as human beings is key to the story's overall message, I think, or overall themes. This play is sort of a call to arms for inclusion, right? Inclusion of people who differ in all sorts of different ways. And I like to think about it in terms of human diversity. It's a kind of biodiversity within species, that we're not all the same. We don't all have the same strengths and weaknesses, and all of that. But one of the things that it's interesting to me sort of in the real world, and that I think, if you think about it, really resonates with that message, is that when you say to someone, are you disabled? And they say no, eventually the answer will be yes.
Yes.
Because we all become disabled in some way unless we die horrifically early.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that focusing on that, or spending some time reflecting on that as a natural part of the human life cycle, would help people treat those who are already disabled more inclusively?
Oh, I think for sure that would help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, as you said, it's part of each of our stories. And even if we should be wonderfully fortunate and that not happen, it's still going to affect the people we're closest to. And so it's still affecting us. So yes, 100%, it's there, it's going to be there. So why not accept it? Why not work towards it? Why not make things better?
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder sometimes whether this need that people have to turn disabled people into objects of inspiration who exist to help them feel more hopeful about their own life and so forth, comes from a fear, a deep-rooted fear of, this could happen to me, one day, that I may someday be disabled in some way. And they need to see disabled people then as sort of beacons of hope, that if this happens to me, it won't be the end of my life, right? But that denies them their full humanity, because people do not exist as objects of inspiration for others. They have their own dignity, right, and their own subjectivity, and there will be days when they are the opposite of inspiring. Let me tell you, I have many of those days, but I understand if that's accurate. My way of thinking about this, if it's accurate, I understand this as a response to coping with that fear. But maybe part of getting past it is not seeing it as something to be afraid of.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a student of humanity, and I'm trying to understand it. One of the things I found really interesting was that they made a movie Alive about the Peruvian football team who crashed maybe just wrong nationally, in the mountains, and they had to survive for so long, and then they chose to cannibalize the dead, and I read quite a lot about that. And one of the things that I found most incredible, when they were being interviewed, they said, well, who were the leaders? Like, who emerged to be the leader? And they said, no one. Sometimes some person would lead, and then they would get bogged down, would become too much, and another person would step forward for as long as they could do it. And they all took turns, not out of a plan, but out of a shared concern, out of a shared idea that the group must continue. And so when the others sagged, whoever had the strength or whatever at that moment to pull a little harder, to lift the others up a little more, did so. And there was no standout person. It was just a group effort that made them survive. And
these were very young people, right? They're all in their early 20s, weren't they? That's kind of inspiring. Recently I rewatched one of the movie versions of Lord of the Flies. And I hadn't seen it since, I don't know, in 30 years probably, and I hadn't read the book in longer. But watching it, I was struck by a couple of things. One of them was that there's basically no racial diversity at all, right, amongst these people. They're all white kids. And two, that if we were to make a movie like this now, or write a book like this now, I think there would be a much more variation among the kids in terms of things like ability, disability, chronic illnesses and conditions and so forth. In the movie, all you have is Piggy who needs glasses, right? But I think to be more of that. And I also think, and this is what made me think about it, based on what you were saying about Alive, is that it has an unduly pessimistic nature of what human beings are at their core. And I think that exists, right? This sort of competitive drive and this that can manifest as bloodlust or whatever, right, in certain people, and a desire to dominate. But there's also a really cooperative and empathetic side to human nature that I think Golding, when he wrote that book, didn't see or didn't recognize.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think as a neurodivergent person, I've always wondered about normalcy and ideas of that. And early on in my life, I tried to understand simple things like why am I always warm, and why was my mother always cold? You know, and so I looked for answers for these things. Why do people have the preferences they do? And having raised my children, we decided to explain everything from the stance of a hunter-gatherer group. I mean, I'm always warm, so I can be outside hunting or gathering or standing guard, and my mother or my partner is always cold because they would be with the children inside the cave and protect them all the time. I'm a loner because I would be the scout or the guard out there, and the people who gather together, they would be the ones who would work together to do this. So we were able to explain every quirk of humanity, everything you can imagine, using this, and even down to why are some people allergic to mushrooms or the smell of mushrooms? Well, it's because when the group found a patch of mushrooms, they all ate them and died, or whatever happened. The ones who didn't lived on. So there's always a little backup plan to get us through. And so then as I grew older, or however it worked, and I encountered people who were considered disabled, I didn't tend to view them as an aberration from normality, but as people with special abilities, like being too warm or whatever it is, that would help them and help the group survive. I mean, I have a really low body temperature, which helps me stay warm. I also pass out really quickly when there's any sort of trauma to my body, and that's so I don't run around and bleed to death. Finds them and kills them. I love their story. When Christian missionaries came, I can't remember, I don't think he was Apache, he was Crow or something, in a very regimented society. He was one of the last ones of the third gender they had, of people who felt like they belonged. He was a man who wanted to do women's roles, and what a strength that was. And even if you look through the whole idea of gender identities and things in lots of societies, especially in matrilineal societies, where your father is not from the area you are, well, it was your mother's brothers who were really important to you, and if they didn't get married and leave because they were gay, they were there to help you out, and this became a real strength to people. And so all these things have explanations. And I had a very close friend who was gay, and I often wondered why. He didn't wonder why, he accepted it totally, but I thought, because it's a physical thing. And if you can find little facts, like in World War II in Berlin, in Germany, when it was encircled and it was constantly bombarded, a lot of the babies, a much higher percentage of the babies that were born, were gay. And scientists were suggesting that giving the strength of a man and the stereotypical emotions of a woman was a survival mechanism, building an individual who was more caring but yet had strength to help things survive. So we're a constant, each person is a collection of all these things. I noticed aptitude is another thing. Say, well, kids just like their dad has that thing. Why is that? That's a survival thing too. I noticed at different points in my life what I was good at, my kid would get some of that, and it's a survival thing. Nature's combining all these things, creating these special little things. I'm going way off topic, but the whole point is
diversity. Though.
Yes, that's why we survive. Right. If we were all the same, we would be dead.
I agree. Yeah. But it makes me think too about about, again, we mentioned this earlier, about what constitutes a disability, right? So in this case, you described, all the people who go to the Roland Center as disabled, and in some uses of the term, they are. In other uses of the term, not all of them would be considered disabled, at least by some people.
Yes.
Right. For instance, Aggie, who is nonverbal, is that a disability? It depends on context.
Yes.
And it's the same with wheelchairs. And at some point, Sean mentions it's not the wheelchair that makes them disabled, right? It's the constructs that are built for people who don't use wheelchairs, right? And so disability and ability aren't inherent traits. They're not meaningful concepts without context.
Yes.
Outside of a context.
If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, I watch the Paralympics and see men and women who have the blades where their legs would be, and how they can outrun normal humans. Wow, they just fly.
Yeah.
And same with people in wheelchairs zooming around, like, who's disabled?
Yeah. When I had my first leg amputated, people were constantly saying, "Oh, you can get one of those blade legs and you can go to the Special Olympics." And I'm like, the rest of the body has to keep up, right? Like, the rest of this is not fit in any way. Yeah, it's not like I could compete in the regular Olympics before. Yeah, anyway, that's sort of off topic. One of the things that's, I think, not coming out in our discussion so far is the fact that this is a comedy.
Yes.
And we're sort of talking very seriously about it because it deals with very serious things. But it's a comedy. It's a really funny comedy. And I remember talking with the other judges when we were going over all the entries. And one of the things that we found impressive too was it is, as we say, funny on the page. And most comedies aren't funny on the page. You can read them and say, "Oh, I see how that would be funny," but they don't become funny until they're performed, right? And this is, different. Very few scripts like that. Some of the Monty Python scripts are like that. But it is a comedy, and I think a really tricky thing to do is to write a comedy with disabled characters that doesn't ridicule those characters,
Right.
where their disabilities are never the butt of the joke. Like that. Can you tell me about sort of walking that line and how you made sure that never happened?
That was a hard one for sure. I mean, I think a lot of it had to be situational, and a lot of it, honestly, is character-based. They're great characters, they're great people, and the things that they find happiness in, their happiness comes out. They play jokes, they do lots of things. There's lots of situations which butt heads, and stand, as the audience, we can see how ridiculous it is from that outside viewpoint. I don't know how carefully I walked that line. I just tried to be true to the characters, because I mean, if you've met people who are different in any way, and who hasn't, they're all funny. I mean, they have good days, they have bad days for sure, but part of the requirement, or I guess ability to survive, comes from being positive too.
Yeah.
Everybody falls down, but you have to at some point get up and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then you're lost. And all of these people, they certainly have fallen down a lot of times, but they also get up and they help each other up, and they keep going. And their joy, their love of life, their desperate desire to experience the beautiful things in life, which they see out there, helps the story to be positive and helps them to laugh and to go forward. Also, it's easier to be positive when you've experienced horrible things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always, the thing to say, first world problems, it's like, oh, my coffee maker doesn't work. Well, once you couldn't get up the stairs because you can't move upstairs, like, you have a different, coffee makers aren't so important.
Right. Yeah. A lot of things become less important.
Yeah.
I mean, you raise a good point too, in that, when you're running a comedy with characters who have disabilities, you also don't want to go to the other extreme of making them so serious, taking everything about the world and themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Because that's also kind of a dehumanization in a way, because people they're in the middle. Sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're not, right? And so finding a way to make situations and so forth in the play funny, strikes me as incredibly difficult with a script like this. But I think you're probably right in that the answer is to really focus on the characters.
I think I was lucky to have worked with newcomers to Canada. A lot of them didn't speak English so well, and here they were thrown together in this drama class with me.
Right.
And I said, okay. Well, actually, it's a stupid long story. I got the times mixed up once, and I was really late. So as makeup, I said, look, we'll put a show on, okay? Because I wasted some of your times, so we'll do this. Because I respected their time. And they didn't want to talk about the immigrant experience. They didn't want to talk about being newcomers. They all wanted to be special things, you know? A group of women from Africa wanted to be hard-nosed police officers, and an immigrant from Hong Kong who barely spoke English wanted to be the mayor and be respected. And they all had things like that they wanted to do, which are not things that my prejudiced head would have imagined them to aspire to. You know, I would have said, oh, they want to be a police officer and walk a beat, or no, but that's what they dreamt of. And so I think that helped me when I came to see these characters. I didn't see them looking out of their own eyes, trapped by their disability or obsessed by their disability. They had the dreams to ride dragons or whatever it is they wanted to do, which wasn't limited by themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great help to me.
And that speaks, I think, to the importance of having experience with diverse people, right? Because your experiences with those people in the drama class helped you break free of assumptions that you held about immigrants, you know, as you said,
for
right?
sure.
And if we don't have those experiences with people who aren't like us in important ways, it's much harder for us to break free of our own assumptions and our own sort of prejudices and points of view, right?
I would say impossible, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah, in sort of in a meaningful way, yeah, impossible. You know, there wasn't a lot of diversity where I grew up, so I was really happy when we moved to Hamilton when my son was little, that he would be going to a school where he would meet people from all over the world, and he would experience so much diversity that I never experienced, because I thought that's the antidote.
Yeah.
In a way,
Yeah.
you know, because I did not want him to grow up prejudiced. Well, I guess let's talk about, sort of switch gears here. Recently, we announced that your play Mirabella won the 2022 Windsor-Essex Playwriting Contest, which makes you, actually we're already, the only person who has won the Windsor-Essex Playwriting Contest more than once, and you've now won it 3 times. How does that make you feel?
Oh, I'm very proud. I mean, writing is hard. Writing something different is hard. I mean, you always feel like, is it a fluke? I just got something right this time. Mirabella wasn't typical for me or my process at all. I already had a play written for that contest, and then 2 weeks before, this idea kind of worked its way out, and I put it down and kept working on it, and I felt that it was really something different and something special for me, something unlike what I have done before, and I was very happy that it was well received.
Yeah, it was definitely well received, and I think very different than the other 2 plays that have won the contest that you've written. You know, one of them was sort of a spooky detective comedy, right? And then we have Pirate Attack and the One Sea Bus Going Downtown, and then Mirabella is it's a very dramatic story, a very serious story. Some bits that are funny, but it's not intended to be a comedy at all. And also, it's intentionally sparse. It's intentionally spare. And what's interesting for me, one of the things that's very interesting to me about that play was that even though it's written to be a sparse, spare play that's performed very simply without sets, you get a strong sense of location all the way through, a sense of place, and that grounds everything, because it's that place that ties all the people together. And even though you're not seeing it when you're reading the script, obviously, and you're not even going to see it when it's produced, you get it, it's in your head. Was that an intentional thing for you? Like, I know the location is really important to the story. Was it always your intent to make it sort of something that lives in the audience's imagination rather than something that's laid out before them?
Yes and no. I think I would have burst a blood vessel if I tried to put it on stage, the sense of that location that all those people came from and was a part of all of them. It was much easier to have it be part of them than try to show it physically on the stage. Instead, they were it.
Right.
And that's also the thing that unites them all and ties them together. And also there's all the differences in there, and it's integral to the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of who each of them are. It was a big part of every character's life, and so it's part of how they interact with the world, right? In different ways, because they're all very different people.
Yeah, I guess if you look at each person as being incredibly different, and you take this one place, Mirabella, and you put all these different things into it, they're all gonna react slightly differently, and that's what we see.
Yeah. The last thing I want to mention before we end the interview is that the second semester of the Theater Skills Education program starts very soon, and you and I are teaching the courses in that program. So I'm teaching a course on producing and then also a playwriting workshop, and you're teaching a directing course. What can you tell us about the course and what people could expect? Because hell, let's plug it. We're here.
Well, I've done a lot of shows, probably more than 500. I've had lots of different directors. I've done a lot of directing myself, and I really wanted to reflect on what I felt worked and what doesn't work. I can't say it's a system that you would use every time, but perhaps a philosophy, a way of working, a way of being open-minded, a way of respecting the actors, the material, regarding your own limits, and moving forward with that to make the best possible project that you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I nowhere near as experienced as you as a director, but I've directed, I don't know, a dozen, 15, and I'm going to be taking the course because I know there's more. It's lots more to learn. There's always more to learn.
I think if you stop learning, then you're done.
Yeah, you're pretty much dead.
So tell us about the production course.
Well, thank you for asking. So the producing course is basically going to be a very active workshopping style course where each class will tackle one element of producing an independent play. So one class is going to be focused on the thrilling world of budgeting, for instance,
important,
which is really important if you actually want to get the play on stage, and then maybe do another one. We'll be looking at promotion. We'll be looking at sort of things that need to be done in pre-production to get things organized so that you're ready at each stage when things need to be done. Those sorts of things. So a very practical, very nuts and bolts approach to producing with very little theory, even though I love theory. This is meant to be hey, you want to produce a play, say, within 6 months or a year from now? Here's what you need to know, the basics. And we're going to work through all of those things with samples so people can try them out and see what kinds of different results they get.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, I've done a lot of playwriting, but I certainly accept that what I do is my own way, as we've talked about the diversity all the way through this.
Yeah.
So what's do you explore in your playwriting?
In the workshop, it's meant to, it's really, I guess, the primary audience for it is people who want to submit to the Windsor-Essex Playwriting Contest.
Which is totally worth it.
Right, thank you. And who are maybe stuck at a certain point with their script, or who are a little anxious about whether the script is ready to submit, or who just like some feedback from diverse people about how things are going right now. To get together, and every class will have read a scene from one of their scripts, or even a précis of a script, and then we'll discuss that as a group, and everyone will have an opportunity to present their ideas, and we'll sort of discuss some common themes that are coming up from the group, but also some differences where the playwright is going to have to make some choices about which of those tastes to appease, right? And people can work through it with the same script every class, or they can bring bits and pieces of different scripts. It doesn't really matter. The idea is just to give people the opportunity to move forward with whatever they're working on.
Right, that's amazing. I know for me, having this contest in existence was the reason Mirabella exists.
That's cool.
Because the first time, of course, I wanted to win the contest. But once you've won the contest, that's great. It really is great. But now I had the freedom to explore and try something, knowing that there was intelligent, respectful people going to be reading this and commenting on it. And so it was more, it wasn't about winning the contest, it was about creating something with a kind of freedom that I know caring people would look at it, and that's why Mirabelle happened.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad. And we'll be seeing it on stage June.
June, that's right.
The plan is June.
2023.
Not very long.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Joey. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
setting
Mike.
up this interview, and thank you everyone for watching and or reading it.